right, so what is true? We talked a little about this earlier this morning. I think it's important to continue to talk about what is true and what Donald Trump is actually saying versus what maybe some of your favorite conservative commentators are saying. If you're listening to me, of course, you know my position. I trust Trump in this, and Trump has not said we're changing regimes. Trump has not said we're fully engaging in war with boots on the ground. Trump has not even said we're going to launch an aerial assault. He has said everything is on the table. That's what he said. Let's go to 2575, specifically the president, in his own words, from the Oval Office yesterday.
Look, they should have made the deal. I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days, we talked about it, and in the end, they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it. And they want to meet, but it's a little late to meet, but they want to meet, and they want to come to the White House. They'll even come to the White House. So we'll see. I may do that. But it's a shame it could have been done the easy way.
Gentleman that knows these issues well, worked in the Department of State for a time. He is Executive Director of Polaris National Security today. Gabriel Nerona joins us again. Mr. Nerona, great to see you, sir.
Hey, Chris. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, and I continue to stay committed to something that I hope I'm not boring the audience with, but I think it's important because you've probably seen it if you've spent some time online. And it's all coming from inside our own camp. The Democrats and the left are off talking about ICE and street theater. They're not even really interested in the subject of Iran at all, which I find kind of curious, and maybe you could explain that one later. But for now, inside our own tent, we as conservatives, there are some prominent voices out there suggesting this is World War III, that Trump is being dragged into a war led by Israel, boots on the ground. I don't think any of that's true. I don't think Trump has said a word. He's just saying everything's on the table. He also said Iran called him up and are willing to come to the White House to meet with him, which I think is huge news nobody's talking about this morning. So what's true, Mr. Nerona?
Well, I think what's true is that no one is coming to Iran's rescue, that no one wants to come and start a war with Israel or the United States if we hit Iran. Russia has abandoned Iran. China's abandoned Iran. The Arabs are rooting us on behind the scenes. And so Iran has lost its proxies, and they have no leverage anymore. Basically, they had 2,000 missiles. They were threatening to strike Israel with all of them. They've barely fired off about 400, and almost none of them have hit. So again, they've lost air superiority. They are at the mercy of Israel at this point. Yes, I think they just don't have leverage, and it's time for them to sort of talk surrender terms, which is what President Trump has called for. I don't think that White House meeting thing is accurate. The Iranians have denied it. President Trump has denied it. They had a policy of never even meeting us in person the last several years, and so I don't think that one has changed like that, but you never know.
Okay, so when I think Trump kind of flirted with that, they denied it, of course, Iran did. So you see no scenario that Trump would ever invite Iranian leaders to the White House?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they've tried to kill him for the last, 5 years now.
So may I ask you something on this? This is a real bugaboo of mine because it came up yesterday, and now what is this famous, and it's going viral. Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz having a discussion about Iran. Did you see any of that?
I unfortunately did, yeah.
Here's the charge. Here's the charge from Tucker. If Ted Cruz or any of us believe that Iran, and you just said it, have been trying to murder the sitting president of the United States, then apparently Tucker's position is we should send the full might of the military, boots on the ground and all, into Iran to topple the regime, which I find kind of curious because his whole argument has been that we ought not get engaged. He says that we don't believe Iran is trying to kill our president unless we give the full might of our military to take them down. Do you agree with that?
Well, I can guarantee you that the Iranians have been trying to kill President Trump. They've been trying to kill my former bosses. And so I've been very vested in this issue because I'm trying to make sure that I'm not on their hit list as well. Look, there were points last year where I understand that there were actually even Iranian drones near the president's motorcade. There were points when the president had to take a dummy aircraft because there were concerns that the Iranians were going to try to shoot down the president's campaign plane. That's how serious it was. And so the idea that Tucker either doesn't know that and wasn't paying attention to that seems ridiculous to me. And then he says, oh, we should nuke Iran if that's what they're doing. Again, he's entirely intellectually inconsistent, doesn't pay attention to anything that's actually going on, and just fear mongers about how there's going to be 3,000 Americans dead if there are strikes on Iran. Again, he's living in fantasy land, and I think
I'm going to give him, Mr. Noronha, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he's sincere, but I really do want to ask you, and I know you're not a military expert, but is it consistent to say we should send the full might of the United States military, sick that, on Iran if we know, and you've just said we know, that they were a threat to sitting presidents and secretaries of state? Is that the way you deal with this? The full might of the military is Tucker's assertion, I guess.
Well, I actually think that the best model here is, strangely, President Bill Clinton. Back in the early 90s, the Iraqis were trying to kill George H.W. Bush, and they made an assassination attempt on him. And what Bill Clinton did was he sent, I think, 34 missiles to the Iraqi Ministry of Intelligence headquarters, blew up the whole thing. And that sent the perfect message. It was, there are consequences for trying to kill an American president. We're going to take out those who are planning it, and then we're going to call it a day. I think that was the model. Frankly, it worked. It restored deterrence. The Iraqis never tried to kill George H.W. again. We don't have to go, do regime change just because they're trying to take out a president, but you have to put costs on this, and that's what President Biden refused to do for 4 years. Again, my colleagues, my bosses were under assassination threat for 4 years. Biden did absolutely nothing in any costs. And that's part of the reason that we're in this situation today. Is Iran did not believe that it would face costs for its actions.
Let me tell you, here's what I know. I hosted an event last year with Mike Pompeo, and I know very specifically he traveled with armed security, and the movements of his day were scrutinized greatly for this very reason we're discussing. The government of Iran has put a hit out on him, and they're still to this day mindful of that, and he has no seat of power at all today. So that's a very real thing, whether you believe it or not, but Mike Pompeo does, for that matter. Gabriel Noronha is with us, Executive Director of Polaris National Security. So here's the other question that I wanted to have answered by someone who knows, and you do, you've been in the room. Regime change. You used the term. This is another one that I keep hearing. Tulsi Gabbard used to say regime change war. Again, people like Tucker saying it a lot. Do you have to see the leadership of Iran exterminated and changed in order to successfully bring them to heel? I don't think Donald Trump is saying that.
Yeah, when I worked for him in the first term, he was pretty opposed to regime change. In fact, he made that very clear to us that we were not to try to go in and achieve regime change in Iran. I don't think you have to do it. I will say this. Look, there's a real question about, let's say, Israel takes out the rest of the nuclear program successfully, which I think they're about to do. What happens when they leave? Will Iran just reconstitute a nuclear program? So I think there's three options. You do some deal where it's, you guarantee that Iran never puts a nuclear facility back together. Option two is you keep bombing them every few years as they develop their nuclear program again. And option three is regime change. So, those are the options. I don't really like regime change as a policy. I don't think we know or have any good track record of success in this matter. And we don't know who's going to come back after.
I was going to say, can we look at Syria as Exhibit A?
And Libya as Exhibit 2? Again, not great answers on any of these.
Afghanistan?
Fronts. Yeah. So I think, regime change is just look, these guys are bad. They're terrible. They've murdered hundreds, thousands of their own citizens. I would love for this regime to leave this earth and go to the trash bin of history better than anyone else. However, there's a difference between me wanting something and me saying the U.S. government should actually pursue that thing and own the consequences of it. There's a real possibility that this regime is going to collapse under the weight of all these Israeli strikes. There's a good possibility that people are going to rise up and do something. What I would say is the United States needs to be prepared for that situation. We need to think through who comes next. but we should not be the ones that, we don't want to break it and we don't want to buy it. But we do need to be prepared and say, okay, who can we work with in the event that the people rise up, take control, or that, again, the regime just collapses, everyone flees to try to go to other countries and save their own wealth and families.
I've got a couple of minutes here left, Gabriel. Israel's neighbors as well as us, our role in this so far, do you believe Israel can take this on and take this out by themselves with our kind of sideline help, shooting missiles here and there out of the sky?
Yeah, I think what I've talked to from the Israelis is they sort of said, hey, the thing that we need the most is we just need help in intercepting these missiles that are coming into our cities. We have a lot of interceptors. However, we do not have infinite number of interceptors. I'll tell you, my friends who work on Asia policy are fretting with every single missile that we're shooting down, because those are interceptors that we don't get to use. Trade-offs here. Every time that we are knocking down a missile, it's going to cost us down the road, but these are Israeli lives that we're saving. These are lives of American citizens who are stuck in Israel right now, who we are saving. Again, that is the single most important thing we can do. Israel has its offensive capabilities. They can take out Fort Dow, I think. They've got the technology. But again, us going on defense. And then the big thing is on the backside, rebuilding our stockpile of interceptors really fast. We've been struggling at this mightily over the last several years. And we have to supercharge our military industrial capacity to rebuild these munitions, or it will literally be too late.
Gabriel Norona, Executive Director of Polaris National Security, at GL Norona, Noronah, on X. Gabriel, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.